The summer's biggest show had its season finale last night, and it was a doozy. Welcome to MOMocrats Chat, part of the Demcast family of podcasts. I'm Donna Schwartz Mills with Karoli and Aliza Worthington of crooksandliars.com. And later on, we'll be joined by our first 2022 congressional candidate, Cheney of New York's new 19th district. So we've got a lot of ground to cover. I think we need to just get into it.
Yep.
Do we want to start with the hearing or the fact that Steve Bannon got convicted?
Well, either one of those are great. I love the fact that he's whining about how the committee didn't come and testify. I mean, as if they needed to come and testify. You know, it's that whole thing is, it would be funny if it weren't serious, you know? I mean,
or the fact that he should have served out his original sentence, but he got pardoned.
Right.
What is he whining about? He's whining that the committee didn't testify?
Come and testify.
Yeah. He wanted Benny Thompson to come there and be questioned.
By whom?
By his attorney.
Is that why he didn't put on a defense? Because Benny Thompson wasn't...
He said they had no defense.
Honestly, it's because there is no defense, right? I mean, this is pretty simple. The committee issued a subpoena.
Yeah, of course.
Steve Bannon received the subpoena. Steve Bannon didn't obey the subpoena,
right,
and is therefore in contempt of Congress. I mean, this isn't hard. I was surprised it took the jury. I think the jury must have gone out to lunch, right?
Yeah.
I mean, right, and then they came. They figured they might as well have lunch and then come back and do the verdict and
make
go
a little
home.
show. Make a little show of having had a discussion in court,
right?
And then,
I mean, don't forget what would have happened to each of these jurors if they had ignored their jury summons, right?
Or a congressional subpoena.
Yeah, exactly. Or a congressional subpoena. And so here's what I'm saying. Peter Navarro, come on down.
Yeah.
Peter Navarro, Mark Meadows.
Mark Meadows
needs to go. I read something in Axios today, Jonathan Swann's new 3-part series, the first part of which just sent chills down my spine.
Which one was that?
This is the one about Section F.
Yeah. And
it was very, very...
But this is all, I mean, this has all been part of the conservative dream, right? Yes. Except that this time, instead of drowning government, you know, what Trump wants to do is just put, you know, patronage, basically get rid of actual good public servants and put in toadies everywhere that can be fired. You know, it will. Yeah. And when he feels like it, instead of having any employment protection. So
but it is so
chilling.
Organized, you know, just like they are training people to be poll workers, you know, they are busy training people to be congressional staffers and White House staffers and federal employees. Their way.
Right.
And the dark money that goes into it, and that you've got Mark Meadows working on it, and, you know, all of his, you know, Kash Patel, all these people. I want all these people to get nailed by the committee and the DOJ.
Same. Well, I'm okay with Georgia nailing Trump too. I mean, let's not forget that state charges, right, can't be pardoned by a president. So if let's say, for example, that Trump is never elected to anything again, because he should never be elected to anything again, but one of his toadies is, or Ron DeSantis or something, God forbid, or something like that, right? He just, you know, pardon Bannon, pardon, you know, all these other people because he could. And then, you know, whatever. But if the Georgia charges stick and he gets convicted on those, no pardon, unless there's a toady governor in there that will pardon state charges. So,
well, this is why
Stacey Abrams is running for governor. It's a good reason to want to elect her, you know?
Yeah.
So,
absolutely.
You know, I mean, what blows me away about all of this, and I know it shouldn't. There's somebody out there who's going to listen to this and say, "How are you even surprised by this?" But it's just a constant.
Not surprising, but it's still shocking.
Yes, it is shocking, and what's shocking is just how deep the corruption runs with Republicans. I mean, they're. Somebody said on Twitter that Liz Cheney is trying desperately to show that there's a Republican Party worth saving, and every time she's proven wrong.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. She is. She's totally proven wrong. I mean, I'm not convinced that the old Republican Party was worth saving, frankly.
Yeah, it's not.
That's just.
I mean, the old Republican Party is the new Republican Party. There's no the fact that there's one or two like Liz Cheney, right, who appear to be principled at least about the Constitution, if nothing else, right? Doesn't mean the Republican Party as a whole is. They're not.
Right. Yeah. So she's just doing her. I'm sorry about like my.
Don't apologize. We love pets and babies.
I know. She is just. You are trouble. But yeah. Was I saying anything?
Yeah, something about Liz Cheney.
Oh yeah. I mean, she's not a traitor. Right. And she's smart. And, and she's apparently also changed her mind on gay marriage.
Well, her sister's gay.
Well, I know that, but that didn't stop her from voting.
That didn't stop her before. She condemned.
I know.
But she's apparently evolved on that, and she's, willing to, be in favor, come out in favor, no pun intended, in favor of the act that protecting gay marriage that the House passed.
Let's see what the Senate
I'm all
does
for evolution and growth, and that's fantastic. But again, I still don't. She's not my friend.
No, she's not our friend.
Not. And but I'll still give her. I'll give her credit for the great job she's doing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would like to.
I'll give Rogan credit for not endorsing Dan Cox. Dan, he's not going to endorse the guy who won the Republican nominee for governor in Maryland because he's a Trumpy. The current Republican governor of Maryland is not, and I'll give him credit for that. He's coming out and he's saying, no, I'm not going to endorse this guy who's running for governor of Maryland.
Yeah, but in the general, is he going to vote for Ronald Reagan again? I don't
know who he's going to vote for. Exactly. I'll give him a little bit of credit, but he doesn't get a full cookie. He gets half a cookie.
Yeah. He wouldn't vote for Biden in 2020.
Is he going to vote for Wes Moore? Probably not. But I mean, that's the thing. Like, I can't get behind people who are so
dogmatic.
They're so dogmatic, and they're so like they cannot vote for people who because of how many rights they want to give. They can't get behind Democrats because they want to give people too many rights. They want to give them too much health.
They want to give them a social safety net.
They want to give them
the problem.
Yeah, like they want to give them too much education. That's it's astonishing to me. And yes, I'm glad I can retain my ability to be astonished. I'm not surprised. But it's not like we haven't read the tea leaves and been following what's going on. It's just,
yeah.
It continues to be remarkable, and it should be, or else we're just as cynical as they are,
Yeah, well, which brings us to last night's hearing, where they did the timeline of what Trump was doing for 187 minutes after he set the armed, violent mob onto the Capitol and couldn't lead the insurrection himself and was pissed off about that.
Oh boy.
And
he wanted to. I come back to like this image that always comes back to me in this of him, sort of his George Washington moment, where he's painted a portrait in his mind of him holding a flag and, with the mob behind him. Yeah, exactly. And, so he's got some like really desperate and somewhat twisted hero image in his mind. That I don't know it, but I mean, if he had gone to the Capitol, that would have been I don't know. I don't know.
It would have been a bloodbath.
It was already a bloodbath.
It was worse. Awful. It would have been worse than it was. It would have been.
Some of the footage they showed last night of people I had not seen before, and it was even more violent than the stuff we'd already seen. It was just amazing to me that, like, why are these people not, in prison with the door slammed behind them? Honestly, it's crazy what some of them were doing. And you think about you have to think about it in context of what we've already learned from the other hearings, where the Proud Boys and the 3%ers and all those guys were, Patriot Front, all of them were aligned and coordinated with this thing, so that they were already breaching the Capitol when Trump was back saying, we're all going to march to the Capitol.
Yeah.
And the fact,
somebody about last night.
Yeah, right. And somebody pointed out that that it was weird that the Secret Service knew that there were armed people in the trees, and they didn't clear everything out and lock everything down like you would expect them to do in that situation.
Right.
Isn't it?
But they also knew that they weren't there to harm the president.
Right. Right. They knew that. But what about everybody else? I mean, that's the thing that just their job isn't just the president.
Well, everybody. This is why these missing texts and missing documentation is such a big deal. And why apparently some of those agents are now retaining counsel, because there is just no way you do a migration without backing everything up first.
Right? My husband just got a new phone. Yeah. He backed it up in the Apple store, especially his messages.
Yeah.
Right? And then plugged it in. Yeah. I mean, they should have been backed up somewhere. Those are government property.
Yeah. But they were told it's optional.
Yeah. Bullshit.
First of all,
it's bullshit when there is a law, that they are supposed to preserve everything.
Yeah.
Right.
Federal records. Trump didn't follow that law.
No.
I mean, Trump is fundamentally lawless. There's so many different things that we can hammer him on as far as illegality.
This goes, what is, to me, this I was surprised by, the Secret Service that is supposed to be, I have an impression of police officers in general as being pro-Trump. Being Republicans in general on the Republican side. But I don't have that impression necessarily. I don't automatically assume a Secret Service agent is a Republican or a maggot.
I do now.
Now we do. I've always gotten the impression that Secret Service people were
nonpartisan.
Were famously, to their core, apolitical people.
Yep. And you see, everything Trump touches,
everything you're seeing here shows that they were not.
Nope, MAGA hats in their offices and getting jobs working on the campaign, and then switching back to being the training officer. Ornato has to come in.
Ornato has to be out of government too.
Yeah.
Talk about somebody in a patronage.
What's the guy's name? Murray?
Murtaugh?
No, his last name is Murray. James Murray.
Oh, the guy that just left to go to Snapchat.
He's leaving to go to Snapchat. How?
Which is known for disappearing messages.
That's the whole thing. That's the whole attraction of Snapchat. No record of anything.
Right. Which I totally don't get, but okay. I mean, I never have gotten it. My daughter uses it all the time, but I just don't get it. So, yeah, I mean, that's
something.
Think about this whole scandal.
I will say that I was surprised about that.
Okay. I was not just surprised. I was furious. I was like, rip it all out, root and branch, start over, because there's something so wrong and so deeply corrupt here. And my first inkling that there was a problem with the Secret Service was back in 2010 when I came into contact for the first time with Dan Bongino, who was on George Bush's Secret Service detail, and left. He was on Obama's for like a day and then he left. And he's a big buddy of Ginny Thomas's, and he's worked for the NRA, and he's Fox News commentator and all that. And I really had no idea how radical he was until he got out of the Secret Service and started opening his mouth. And apparently there's a lot of them like that still work there. And I remember when just before Biden's inaugural, but after January 6th, I think, when they announced that they were switching up his detail to ones that he had before, because they could be trusted. I guess.
Right.
I mean, I don't know. Yes, he should have people that he trusts.
Absolutely.
He should.
Absolutely.
But why should that even be an issue? I mean,
but you guys, I mean, there's still the mystery of the bombs that were left at the RNC and the DNC.
Yeah.
The Secret Service supposedly swept the DNC before Kamala Harris was there. And yet that bomb was there at the same time as she.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and people with weapons were in trees when she was at the DNC at the same time.
Right.
So, I mean, what's that's what I'm saying. It's like they just absolutely didn't do whatever they're supposed to be doing. And I've been swept by the Secret Service when Obama was in office, and I used to go to his events when they'd be in town or whatever. I mean, it was serious. You left your equipment and everything so they could have their bomb sniffing dogs in there and search it. Yeah, I mean, it was a big deal.
Oh yeah, I worked at the Tonight Show when Nancy Reagan was a guest, and I couldn't even go backstage that day.
Yeah,
because the Secret Service wouldn't even let staff in.
I believe it. So that's why none of this makes any sense to me in terms of their behavior that day. And then more broadly, something has to be done about this. I mean, they can't just like go and delete all their messages after. And by the way, they were told in December to preserve everything, and that well before they did their phone upgrade.
Right.
And everything. And yet,
I only learned yesterday. I did not realize that they deleted a month's worth of messages.
Mm-hmm.
Not just those 2 days. They deleted from December 10th. From December,
he was planning it through December,
which is what tells you he was planning how premeditated this was.
Yeah,
right. Totally.
I know that Mark Short went in on January 5th and said, hey, there's a security threat to the vice president. But I didn't realize that the Secret Service had, that they had deleted that much all the way back to December 10th. I didn't realize that till yesterday.
And speaking of that, one of the paradoxes to me that came up was in the testimony last night, hearing that that Mike Pence's Secret Service detail was calling, saying call their families, tell them I love them. All they were fearing for their lives.
Yeah.
So in that sense, they were doing their job. Although on the other hand, he wouldn't get in the car with them. Remember?
Yeah, he wouldn't get it. But were those his?
I'm not getting in that car.
It was the driver. He didn't trust, I thought.
That's what I'm asking. Like, was it that he wouldn't get into that car? Was the car he was being told to get into, were those from his people,
the driver?
Or were those from Trump's people that he didn't know?
Right. He said to the guy, I trust you, but I don't trust this guy.
Yeah, I don't know those details.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, none of us knows because Mike Pence needs to be questioned too.
Mike Pence is a coward. I'm sorry. He should be up there. This guy had his life threatened. He was plotted against. It's not even just like a spur of the moment, let's hang Mike Pence thing. It was a planned let's hang Mike Pence thing. No. Right. And one of the things that came home last night was when they talk about that tweet of Trump's that was, Mike Pence failed to do his duty. And the megaphone guy was ready at the Capitol reading that out. And, all over, they were like reading it out and lighting a fire under those rioters to do more insurrection.
Not only that, and he was lighting a fire under the rioters and saying, okay, don't forget the Capitol Police are our friends.
Yeah.
It's the Congress people who are not our friends. The senators are not our friends. We're going,
right.
you know, like that, because Trump had made that differentiation in his tweet.
Right.
You know, be nice to the Capitol Police. They're on our side, you know, and the guy was interpreting that, and he was saying, he was reading
he didn't say anything about the Congress
people.
Right.
And, you know, and they were like, yeah, and they were getting ready to go. Yeah. And, you know, the thing that's really interesting is that there was this, there was a guest op-ed in the Times yesterday by I'm not sure, signed by I don't know how many 4-star generals and admirals, about the chain of command and the dereliction, you know, just agreeing that, you know, that Trump is guilty of dereliction of duty and not failing to protect and not protecting the Constitution and not protecting the branches of government that as commander in chief he's sworn an oath to protect. And that it was the fact that it was Mike Pence who actually made the call, who tried to get National Guard. He was in no position to make that call. The president hadn't been incapacitated. The president hadn't done, you know, there was no transfer of power had happened. And the op-ed goes into great detail to explain how many things had to have gone so wrong for Mike Pence to have got, you know, made that actual phone call, taken that step. You know, he wouldn't take the step to overthrow the election, which was also not one of his the powers that he had. But he also did not have the power to call up the National Guard.
Right.
But yet he felt that was something he had to do, or else more people were going to die.
And that time, it was obvious Trump wasn't
doing it. And this, you know, and it's a fascinating article, and all of these military people of you know, really high rank, they're all 4-star generals and admirals.
I need to find that and read it.
I'll send it to you.
Okay.
It's really interesting. Just what an absolutely extraordinary move it was militarily for the vice president, who wasn't technically in charge, to have done that.
What I found interesting last night, aside from the way they trolled Josh Hawley, was,
you know, we got to get a little happiness out of this. We got to get some.
We do. And I loved how they laughed in the hearing room when they saw everybody, you know.
God.
But it was the
Me too.
The list of the senators that Trump was calling. He wasn't calling a National Guard, but he was calling Marsha Blackburn, you know?
Right. Yeah.
Coach Tuberville.
Yeah. Well, we knew about Tuberville.
And that just kind of absolutely makes it the whole thing solid about how premeditated this was.
Yeah. And how
it's like, I'm going to stir up the crowd. Huh?
How deep it went. How the insurrectionists are still there in the government.
Right.
Mucking up the works.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one of the things I said last night was, you know, I was talking to John Amato about an article he was going to write. And I said, you have to say in this article that the senators that voted to acquit him, I mean, he should never hold office again. He should never, ever hold office again. And there was an opportunity for that to happen. And these cowardly senators would not do it.
Yeah.
And this is why we're in the fix we're in now. Nobody would care about him anymore if he couldn't run for office again.
That's right. He wouldn't be able to be raising hundreds of millions of dollars the way he is.
No.
He's got more money in his PAC than the DNC and the RNC combined.
Yeah, well, and he's spending less of it on politics and more of it on himself.
Well, he gave $1 million to that CPI organization that Mark Meadows is working for.
Yeah. So, I mean, Jon Stewart wrote a good op-ed today about this complicit senators.
Yes,
and basically, yeah. So I'd recommend reading that on his Substack, the editorialboard.substack.com.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or on one of his tweets, because I think the editorial board is a paid subscription, but he puts them all in his tweets and tweet threads.
Yeah. So. I hate that, but yeah. I hate it because I have him on a list. So when he does one of those long threads, that's all I see. I don't see anybody else's. And it's like, I already subscribed to your thing over here, dude. So don't put it all on Twitter.
You just scroll. Just scroll. So
easy for you to say.
I am looking forward to season 2 in September.
Me too.
By that time, Benny Thompson should be done with his COVID. President Biden should be done with his
COVID.
Yeah, they're both fully vaccinated and boosted, and that's
and they've got medical care.
They've got medical care. They've got Paxlovid, and that's
Paxlovid is great.
This is what enables people to survive COVID. I don't understand people who will not get the vaccine. I don't get it.
Anyway, we're about to be joined by our candidate, Jamie Cheney, who is running as a Democrat in a newly drawn district in New York.
I started a company that is focused on supporting working parents in the workforce and giving them the tools that they need to succeed. Subsidized childcare, flexible schedules, healthcare for all employees. When I was a young parent, I was pregnant. And due to a very rare immune disease, I got very, very sick. Doctors were able to identify a medication that I needed to fight the infection. If you make the decision to take this, there's a real risk of significant health impacts to the fetus. And my husband and I made a healthcare decision to terminate the pregnancy. These are our choices, and we need to be able to make them. I cannot wait to get onto the debate stage and have Mark Molinaro look me in the eye and tell me that abortion is not healthcare. Those rights were not hypothetical to me when I had to make my own healthcare decision. They're not hypothetical to women today. No law, no tradition, no Supreme Court decision is too big to challenge and change. I am Jamie Cheney, and I approve this message because we need to protect our reproductive freedom.
Hi, all. How are you? Thank you so much for having me.
We are very happy to meet you.
Thank you. And you will notice in my background that I am hiding in one of my children's rooms because this is what campaigning as a mother looks like at 5:30 on a Friday night. I mean, this is the only quiet spot in the house.
It works for me.
Yeah, it's fine. We can relate.
I can't tell from looking at it that you're in a children's bedroom.
I mean, there's a foosball table on the floor behind me.
Oh, is there? Oh, well, I can't really.
Yeah, I guess it's floor line side, but there's some kids running around downstairs and my office wasn't quiet enough. So here I am in this corner. But thrilled to be here with all of you today. Thank you so much.
We'll find you.
We are thrilled to have you. I caught your appearance on Morning Joe the other day, and your ad is terrific. For those of you who haven't seen it, Jamie is running in a rural district, a brand new rural district in New York State, and she has a message, Post-Dobbs, that I think appeals across the spectrum.
Donna, that's absolutely right. So this is a very rural district. As you mentioned, it is larger than the state of Massachusetts. We have a few very, very small urban centers, but it's primarily a rural district. And frankly, there are parts of it that are deeply, deeply red. And the day that the Dobbs decision came down, at the very moment, I happened to be out in the district on the campaign trail, and I was with a group of women across party lines. And when someone interrupted the conversation to let us all know that we just heard about the decision, to a person, every woman there had silent tears rolling down her face, myself included. I obviously we had some warning of the decision. I didn't expect the deeply emotional reaction. I also didn't expect to see it in real time on women's faces across the political spectrum. And this is what we're hearing on the doors, that this deeply, deeply concerns women. And They are looking for a candidate who reflects that, understands that this is not a policy exercise. This is women's lives who are on the line. I'm very open about the fact that my personal story is a story of abortion as healthcare. I was in my first trimester and I already had young children. I have a rare immune disease and I got very, very sick. And doctors identified a medication that would address the infection, but were quite clear that it came with significant risks to the fetus. And I was sick enough at this point that I couldn't get out of bed to take care of my existing young children. And so my husband and I made a medical decision, a healthcare decision that was the right thing for many lives involved, the lives of our family, the lives of our young children who needed me actively in their life in that moment. My decision to terminate a pregnancy was a healthcare decision. It's a decision that every woman, every family should have a right to. And I will do whatever it takes to make sure that women of today and tomorrow have that same right and can make the same decision that I was able to.
Amen. Even in your rural district, this affects women who have to drive a long way to get healthcare, to get an abortion. This is, I know New York is I grew up in Brooklyn and my parents live in Ulster County, so they're almost in your district, but not quite.
Part of Ulster is actually in our district.
Oh, is that right? I thought there was a line there.
The line is right through the middle of Ulster. So depending on where they are, they may be in our district.
I don't think so. I think my parents said Tim Ryan, not the Ohio Tim Ryan, but
Pat Ryan's running.
Oh, Pat Ryan. Oh, so my parents got it wrong. See how well they know?
It's really confusing here on the ground in this moment.
It's very confusing. And it's also confusing for them because they just moved up from, they had two homes. They had a home in Ulster County and they had a home in Brooklyn, and they were voting in Brooklyn up until like last year, literally. So they're only just getting to know the politicians up in Ulster County where they are. Anyhow, regardless.
Yeah, I have to say, Jamie, I had to read the explanation of the special election and the primary election and the November election in the old district and the new district. And I had to read that 3 times before I understood it.
Yeah. We've tried, if you've been to our website, if you go to jamiecheney.com, the 19th district, we tried to do a visual explanation. And we actually carry that with us out in the district, printed on a single piece of paper. Because unfortunately, even more than policy questions, this is the question that we're being asked. What's going on? Where are the district lines? Who do I vote for? When do I vote? Do I really vote on 2 different ballots on the 23rd in a single visit to the BOE? And the answer to all of the above is yes. The best place to check out that visual is on our website. And even with the visual at hand, it is still confusing. So thank you for everyone for taking the time to try to figure it out.
Yeah. I'm going to have my parents, they're actually on their way down here today. At the moment, they're in transit, but I told them that I was, going to be talking to you, but they didn't think that you were their person, but they might be now. That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So it shouldn't be that hard.
No, it should.
But
there was a little bit of an alignment of the stars in the sense that, so many things had to happen. Our lieutenant governor here in New York obviously resigned around some allegations. So that was in the beginning of the year. That opened up the lieutenant governor's seat. Then Representative Delgado was appointed to that seat. So now you have an open seat.
Yeah.
And then I think 5 days after his seat opened up, the new lines came down that split his old seat. So Pat had already stepped into the special, and that's what left the void. That said, I think that this is an amazing void in this moment in time because it's a truly, truly purple district. It forces the candidate who will win this district has to reach across party lines. You don't win this district, frankly, likely from either party without crossover. And also because of the tight timing, it created a situation where people who hadn't been posturing for years and positioning themselves, frankly, myself, could step in and run. And I think that especially in this moment post-Dobbs, what we're seeing is we do not need career politicians. We don't need someone who's been in DC, for 20 years working as a lawyer, waiting for their moment to step into a congressional race. We need people who are seeing the damage that's being done in real time, either to women Or another story I'm quite open about is I have 3 young boys. They're 12, 10, and 8. I'm sitting in my 10-year-old's room right now. And I've done drop-off one day since the beginning of this race. Congressional schedule does not lend itself to school drop-off. But that one day happened to be 2 days after the Texas shooting. And my 8-year-old from the backseat of the car sort of in a moment of silence. And you could tell the chattering had stopped and he was really thinking. And he stopped and he said, "Mommy, if the shooter comes to my classroom, do you think I should hide in the bathroom or should I try to climb out the window like the girl in Texas?" It breaks your heart as a mother. I mean, you say my heart goes out to the parents in Texas. This doesn't compare at all, but we're doing little bits of damage every single day when we ask our children to think about this versus, what the new game at recess is going to be.
Yeah.
We are doing real-time damage to a generation of children, of women, and we need representatives where this is not a political posturing game.
Right.
We need representatives who understand that lives and mental health are on the line.
And you're a gun owner.
I am a gun owner. I'm very, very open about that. My husband and I run a cattle farm. We run about 70 head of commercial cattle here in the Hudson Valley. A gun is very much a tool on the farm. We use it for vermin in the barn, other situations like that. We own a shotgun. It holds 2 bullets, and the bullets live in one safe and the gun lives in the other. And frankly, my children have understood the concept of a gun since they were very young and understood that it was never something that is anything but a tool in the barn approached with an adult. And I think gun owners in my community tend to be the safest gun owners.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because it's part of our dialogue as to what kind of guns are acceptable. These very small magazine shotguns, mm-hmm. and what guns are not acceptable. No one in my community believes that there's any place for an assault weapon in civilian hands. There's a strong view. The Buffalo shooter was born in this district, in a small town just south of Binghamton. And that really hit home for people. I think this feeling of, in the town just over from that town, someone was born and raised and went and did that. And among gun owners, there's a very strong feeling that we need an assault weapon ban, that we need investment in background checks and in red flag laws. And I believe that I can have that. I know I can have that conversation with a lot of credibility because I have it every single day.
Wow.
I should mention, I'm a Moms Demand Action certified candidate, in that conversation, this was discussed a lot. The fact that the way that guns fit in a rural culture is very, very different from the glamorized video game driven culture that we see many of these instances coming out of, and that our rural communities see no place for assault weapons.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm still blown away by what your son asked. I'm not sure what I would have done in your shoes. I had one instance when my youngest daughter, who's well out of school now, she's 26, but when she was a senior in high school, there was somebody threatening to bring a gun to school and shoot people, and I just went out of my body. I mean, I was going to keep her home. I was going, I was trumpeting, shouting everywhere. And now it's just almost commonplace. It's the idea of having active shooter drills just still blows my mind.
As you know, I'm LAUSD, and when my daughter was in high school 10 years ago, I mean, there would be lockdowns almost weekly.
Yeah.
And there was actually a gang murder on their athletic field after school one day. And, it's horrifying. You worry about you just,
mm-hmm.
Columbine happened when she was little.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember just, telling my husband that he's from Britain, and telling my husband that I thought we should move. We should go back to your country where you can't get guns so easily. And of course, it's just gotten worse and worse and worse. It hasn't gotten better.
Yeah.
Would you say that the two biggest issues in front of you as far as your congressional run are Dobbs and guns? Are those the ones that generally come up?
They do. So I'm quite insistent with my team, and insistent sounds like I'm pushing back on them. We've all come together on this, which is that we spend 10% of our time on doors or on the phones with Republicans, even though we're in a Democratic primary, because I think as soon as you lose the dialogue, you lose, frankly, the ability to win the general, and you simply lose touch with your overall district, which you're committed to representing. And so when we throw in that mix of doors, there's 3 issues: Roe, guns, cost of living. And the weight that people will give to those issues. And, occasionally we'll hear a different 4th or 5th, but those 3 are just head and shoulders above. The weight will alter, but the 3 issues are the same. The candidates we need this year, and we're really hearing that people are often saying, I don't feel aligned with any particular party anymore. I feel let down by each party in a different way. I'm looking for a candidate. The candidates that we need in a year like 22 are candidates who can speak with credibility on guns, who can speak to Roe in a way that crosses party lines and that does not make this purely a policy issue, but that can truly speak to the experience of having a healthcare right removed from you, but also candidates that have credibility and a track record on supporting working families. So I built a business that supports working parents, specifically in the financial services industry, which is generally an industry dominated by large companies that don't necessarily believe they need to change. We did a lot of work to identify what the 3 key tools were that allow working parents to succeed. And what we identified statistically is it is flexible schedules, backup or subsidized childcare, and healthcare for all employees, even at the 60 or 80% level. When a company puts those 3 tools in place, their retention is going to go up significantly, and we're going to ultimately see a net positive impact to their bottom line, even with the cost of those benefit programs. So
I told you they'd find you.
Real time. So I've built a business that already looks at what helps families, and I haven't talked about it. I haven't stood on I haven't written briefs. I haven't written policy papers. I went out, identified the need, and built that business and created jobs. And in doing that, I'm the only candidate in this race who has either created a job, helped a working parent stay in the workforce, or built a business. My GOP opponent has spent his entire career as a politician, and my primary opponent has spent his entire career behind a desk as a lawyer. Neither of them have ever actually delivered change for working families, particularly around a cost of living issue.
So I'd like to go. I told you they would find you.
Podcast,
I told you.
Kids or pets,
I have 3 kids too. Yeah. They find you.
Find you, no matter how hard you hide.
On going back to Dobbs and crossing party lines, it's I'm a clinic escort.
Thank you.
And you're welcome. That wasn't going for that, but
that's the real work and the hard work, and thank you for doing it.
And I've been doing that for about 5 years now in 2 different parts of Maryland. And let me tell you, there are different animals, and depending on where you are, if you're in Baltimore City or if you're in, Hagerstown, which is much more rural. But I understand the impulse and the need to frame abortion as a healthcare issue. But I also feel I feel like it is very, very important for people to understand the narrative and learn to be okay with the narrative that a woman should also have a right to determine whether or not she wants to be pregnant. Mm-hmm. Having nothing to do with whether her life is on the line or whether she's been raped or any of those things. I don't agree with of course a person who's been raped should be allowed to have an abortion. But I also think that shouldn't be the only instance in when someone should be allowed to have an abortion.
So
and I get frustrated when these are the narratives that are, and that's amazing that is your story. But I wonder if there is some way that you can also incorporate in your messaging that these are not the only acceptable circumstances under which a woman or a person with a uterus should be allowed to seek an abortion, especially given what's going on now. And we're seeing there laws, the trigger laws that have been passed. There are people not able to get medications, and now there's I don't know if it was North Carolina or South Carolina. Hold on. South Carolina state senators just introduced legislation that would make it illegal to aid, abet, or conspire with someone to obtain an abortion, and it blocks information being passed. It blocked information being passed about how to obtain an abortion, and these kinds of things. This is what it's leading to. So I wonder if and I believe that Republicans agree with this too, this thing that I'm saying. I think Republicans agree with a lot of that too. And I'm not saying any of this to disagree with you, but I'm wondering if in your travels you think that it's possible to expand this narrative about abortion.
Yeah, I think that there's two places we need to expand the narrative that speak to the issues you're touching on. And the first one is we need representatives who frankly have had this experience in some way.
Yes.
Because
woman do, they just aren't saying it.
and this is why we made that ad, and this is why we need people to stand up and share their experience and share that this is not a fringe thing.
Yes,
this
absolutely.
is mainstream. Any woman or person with a uterus who has had an abortion will tell you that even at a very early stage in pregnancy is a traumatic physical experience. It is a incredibly, incredibly hard decision. Once we make sure we have those voices, this concept that women are using this casually will go away. Because no one who understands what this procedure is, even in the first trimester, would think that anyone is ever approaching it casually. And I think that's where we get to a lot of the issue of this should not be a tool that women have. No woman ever wants to be in this situation. The second piece, and I think that this, in my district, I can tell you this is of equal importance. So we have 2 clinics, one at either end of the district, and it takes 4 hours to drive from one end to the other. So that means that there are women by default who are 2 hours from the nearest Planned Parenthood, and 90% of the district is an OBGYN desert, which means that people are 45 minutes or more from OBGYN care. So even someone who wants contraception or to get information about what's happening in their body, might suspect that they are pregnant, needs to get themselves there. We have families who are working 2 to 3 shifts. So let's talk about what that might mean. That might mean missing a shift of work. Maybe you got to get childcare to cover that shift. Yep. And then gas is $5 a gallon. And oh, by the way, the first appointment we have, because there's so few OBGYNs, is in 3 months.
Right.
How
exactly.
that help?
So this is exactly when I mentioned that this was something, being in the rural district that you are, why Dobbs, the tangible effect that Dobbs is going to have for you. And when you're going to have pharmacists who work at CVS who say they're not going to even give you your birth control prescription or whatever medication that might cause a miscarriage, this is going to affect even the bluest or, the states that, codify Roe, or codify, legal abortion. So so this is, you're really having to deal with this. And
we need a commitment to women's healthcare and frankly, all healthcare. And we need to expand what the idea of access means. So often the dialogue in our country about access to healthcare is around cost. And while that's a very important part of it, there's an entirely other overlay of all kinds of healthcare in my district, which has to do with, is it even available within a proximity that you can get to? And I have to say, you referred to CVS. Most of our small towns don't have a CVS. That's right. 2 towns. We're talking one stoplight towns here. One thing that I think is really interesting is that here in New York State, we are a blue state, right? Mm-hmm. We think of ourselves as on the East Coast. We don't need to think about these big rural problems. This is one of the most rural districts in the country. Yeah, we absolutely do. And we've actually started some outreach and realized we can learn a lot more about how to support women's healthcare and all healthcare from colleagues in South Dakota, for example, or Missouri, than in some ways from our downstate colleagues. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because in the business world, you intuitively look for parallels and best practices. And it was very funny to me to understand that that's not as commonly done across state delegations, particularly between some of the very blue and some of the very red states. And there's so many great mobile clinic case studies out there. Yes. It's not a substantial investment. We could have mobile clinics in our towns once a week. That means that the 15-year-old girl without a driver's license can walk there. And we need that level of commitment to both healthcare and women's healthcare in our rural areas.
Yep.
I can see the beginnings of your first bill that you're going to write.
Absolutely.
Seriously, that's an answer.
A good one. Yep. Yes.
You said a mouthful there.
Yeah.
That was I really appreciate that answer.
Thank you.
And I don't even live there anymore.
You need to move like now.
No, I'm good in Baltimore.
Yes. But you mentioned, even in Baltimore, in a very blue state, there are deeply rural areas that are not far away. And we need to be conscious.
We have people coming from West Virginia. We have people coming from Penn. The one out in Hagerstown is right by the border.
Yep.
And we have people coming down from Pennsylvania and from, those rural areas and, which is also, bluish. And we get people with out-of-state license plates all the time coming to the clinic out there. It's that one's a private clinic. The other, the one in Baltimore City is a Planned Parenthood. And people were shocked to learn that in Baltimore City, there are protesters at the Planned Parenthood. But let me tell you.
Yeah. The bigger the city, the more diversity there is.
There.
That includes
like clockwork.
Yeah.
Diversity in all ways.
Yes. So, Jamie, before we wrap this up, where can we go to donate to your campaign, to volunteer for your campaign, to write postcards?
Absolutely. So I will say it has been exciting to see the support coming in from across the country since our ad went national on Monday. And there are opportunities to do all of those things on our website at JamieCheney, JamieCheney.com. No relation to Liz, except for a possible distant relation in strength of backbone only. JamieCheney.com. We have phone banks and postcard writing going on at all times. And I will tell you that any dollars donated are going straight to getting our message out there, getting our message that people do not need to make a hard choice, but there is a candidate for them who can deliver on protecting our reproductive health care, protecting our safety in schools, in supermarkets, and truly fighting for gun reform while making sure that families in our country can afford to live the lives that we truly believe that all Americans can live. Thank you so much for having me today.
Oh my goodness.
So great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yay.
And that is our show for this week. Join us next week at MOMocrats.buzzsprout.com or our YouTube channel, or find us on your favorite podcast service such as iTunes, Google, and Amazon Music. And be sure to check our Facebook page for updates. I'm Donna Schwartz Mills saying goodbye for the MOMocrats. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thanks again, Jamie.
Don't sign off.
MOMocrats Mama Chat is part of the Demcast family of podcasts.